Hey everybody, it's Trent.
And Betsy.
Back again for another week of celebrating patreon.com/neverseenitpod. This week we're going to be putting on a clip from our show Box Set, where this year we have actually covered 4 different movie trilogies in their entirety. This week's clip is actually from episode 1 of season 1 of Box Set, where we covered the Dark Knight trilogy.
And this clip is obviously the episode that started it all with Batman Begins.
Of course, if you haven't already heard, we are offering a discount for anybody who signs up in the month of December. Go to patreon.com/neverseenitpod to sign up today. Enjoy the following clip. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of our brand new show called Box Set. My name is Trent. I'm sitting here with my wife, Betsy.
Hello, everyone.
As per usual, we are going to be sitting down here every episode to talk about a movie. Now, Box Set is a brand new show, like I just said, where Betsy and I are going to sit down and watch an entire series of movies back to back.
It could be a trilogy, a set of 4. We're probably not going to dive into any 10 movie series anytime soon.
Yeah, and we said we are probably going to start off with a trilogy, and here we are. Betsy, we're covering the Dark Knight trilogy. Now, we said this was going to be a series of movies that everybody knows.
You definitely know about these movies.
Besides going back and doing, the Star Wars original trilogy or Back to the Future, let's do something a little bit more contemporary that Betsy and I have a bit of a connection to, at the very least as a couple. We actually did watch one of these movies in the theater back when we were still dating.
Of course, if you can call this contemporary, because our first movie is already going to be 19 this year.
Yeah. Batman Begins is the first one we are covering, Betsy. We just sat down and watched it before we came over here. And we're going to talk about the movie, but before we kind of get into there, I want to go into contextually where were we and where was cinema, for lack of a better word, back in 2005 when this movie came out. Now, Betsy and I both graduated from high school in 2003. We were both in college, and I don't really remember a lot of people talking about it right at the time. It wasn't until maybe the next year that I started hearing about it, because I just didn't pay attention to a lot of brand new movies.
So I obviously paid a lot more attention than you did.
Yeah.
I was a long-time subscriber of Entertainment Weekly, so I definitely knew, even in college, when I was living out of state and I was always busy with classes and stuff, I still was aware of the movies that were being released. And this was a big summer blockbuster. Mm-hmm. But if you go back to 2005 and think about the context of where we were as a country, where movies were, we're coming off a couple of years with the X-Men and Fantastic Four and a whole decade for us as kids where Batman was really campy and Spider-Man was even kind of campy.
Yeah, we covered the Spider-Man original trilogy for the May Never Seen It show, and it was Sam Raimi who directed all 3 of those movies, and he was known for, a bunch of horror stuff, so he threw in kind of his own style on top of that comic book thing. But comic book movies didn't really have a groove yet.
They existed, but they were all kind of cheesy. There were some that were fine, but they were all kind of bad in their own way. They weren't great movies. They were fun, they were entertaining, but there were some awful comic book movies. This is years before the MCU really took off. Mm-hmm. DC hasn't been doing anything up to this point. And then you've got kind of an unknown group of people making a dark Batman. Because Christopher Nolan had not become a household name. When this movie was in development, I remember people saying, oh, Christopher Nolan's going to direct. Now, I knew who he was because I had seen Memento, but he certainly hadn't made any giant summer blockbusters.
No, he wasn't really known for any, now...
He wasn't really known.
Yeah, now today, we're sitting here in 2024, and the biggest, one of the biggest movies that came out last year was Oppenheimer, and that was the big Christopher Nolan movie that everybody's been anticipating for over a year now.
For the last almost 20 years, he has now become
Yeah.
the big summer blockbuster guy. But in 2005, he was not. And then it's like, okay, he's gonna make Batman. Also, it's Christian Bale, who in 2005, once again, he had done movies people heard of. He had been around. He had not been nominated for any Oscars. He was not a household name. It was a whole lot of circumstances where it's like, wait, that guy?
Right.
He's gonna be Batman.
And again, think about the context. Who was the previous Batman in a theater-produced Batman movie?
George Clooney.
And that was one of the campiest fucking movies ever.
Shut up. I fucking love Batman and Robin, and someday we are going to sit down and watch it together. It's a terrible, terrible movie, but I'm here for it.
But
that's me.
But you get my point, though.
Yeah.
It was that movie was the last one that came out.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
Batman was a fucking joke. He had nipples on his bat suit, and George Clooney ruined the franchise, as they kept saying.
Right. And how else is DC going to recover from something like that other than taking a complete unknown?
A sort of unknown. Not a household name anyway.
Not in this space. But they're going to take this property and turn it around and say, okay, we're actually going to go back to the roots of Batman in its essence. We're going to be dark. This city is going to be fucking filthy. You're dealing with like rapists and murderers and all sorts of different shit that you don't really think about when you think about Batman villains and Batman as a concept.
But the original Batman was a dark noir.
Right.
And people are so far removed. We're almost 100 years into Batman being a thing. And people have forgotten because in the 60s he went campy and it just sort of stayed on that lane until Christopher Nolan came around and said, nope. We're going to go back to like those 80s comic books that were really dark and the original comic books from the 30s that were really dark.
And since this trilogy ended, DC and all of the movie studios that have been trying to put out movies around it, they've been trying to recapture the essence of this trilogy. Now, to be honest, we haven't actually seen any of the new Ben Affleck Batman movies. We did watch The Batman last year, which we thought was great. Partially because they went back to the very dark roots of the kind of noir crime drama that movie was. So we can't really say too much about the Ben Affleck thing and all of the stuff in the Snyderverse.
Where Batman is today.
No, and we've talked about it on the main show. We're just not into the DC stuff, the current DC stuff. We still haven't sought out any of that stuff. We might do it eventually, but for right now, we're going to stick in the past with this here trilogy.
But yeah, that's where we were in 2005. And I'm going to be honest with you. I did not see this movie in the movie theater. I wasn't interested in a dark Batman because I grew up with comic book, silly, over-the-top, campy Batman.
Right.
I didn't know who Christopher Nolan was beyond Memento. I thought it was kind of a strange arrangement of individuals. And then this movie came out and I just sort of let it happen. And it wasn't until everyone around me had seen this movie and were like, oh my God, Batman Begins. It's an incredible movie.
Right.
I'm like, really?
Right.
That's kind of weird because I had very low expectations for this.
Yeah, and I didn't see it in the theater either. And I don't think I watched it until maybe the following year. I was still living at my parents' house at the time. I dropped out of college at the end of 2005. And I don't remember if we rented it or I saw it, and maybe I saw it at a relative's house or something like that. But I saw it on this, 32-inch tube TV, maybe on a DVD.
Like the worst way you could watch it.
At best, I watched it on a DVD on a 32-inch tube TV.
I also watched it on a DVD on a 32-inch tube TV. The DVD was one from the library and it was scratched to shit and it kept like freaking out.
Yeah.
So I had a really hard time the first time I watched this movie and I might have given up. I can't remember. But I eventually got through it one way or another.
And I do remember liking the movie. I just don't think I really got the full spectrum of what I was witnessing here because part of it is the medium. watching it the way we did, and like we keep on saying, not only is this like dark subject matter, but the movie itself, the visual nature of it is very, very dark. Yeah, you can't hardly see anything if you don't have the quality. And speaking of quality, part of the reason why we call this show Box Set is Betsy and I are still very much believers in physical media. When we sat down to watch Batman Begins tonight, we put in a disc of the 4K version that I bought in a real box set. It's one of the first 4K box sets that I had ever bought. It came with a whole bunch of other Christopher Nolan movies, including this entire trilogy.
It was probably expensive as shit, too.
It was. Inception, Interstellar, The Prestige, everything, and Dunkirk. Everything came in one box set.
Everything that came after this movie, basically.
Exactly. The only thing it didn't have that I wish it did is Memento, because I've only ever seen that movie once with you in your apartment.
Yeah, we'll come back to that one.
But my point is, there are elements of this movie that you're never going to catch if you're not watching it in its highest quality, even in just HD on a smaller TV. Like our setup here is a 4K 65-inch LG OLED screen. So it's about as good as you can possibly get.
Short of a home video screen, like an actual projector.
Yeah, we don't have a home theater setup.
We don't have the space for that.
No, we really don't. Not in this house anyway. Maybe the next house.
Sure, obviously.
But, you know, we have a surround sound system, so we are trying to envelop ourselves in the best version of a movie theater experience that we can possibly get.
In our own house.
Yeah. And, you know, streaming is okay for some things. It is not very good for a lot of darker kinds of movies because you lose a lot of it in the video compression that comes across the internet.
And if you don't have like a surround sound system, the sound is going to be very flat and not the same experience as watching it in a
if you're
theater.
watching this on a sound bar or through the speakers of your television, you're missing out on so much.
So all that being said, I've not actually watched